Listen to the number that destroyed FBI Director Kash Patel's remaining credibility in just 5 minutes, 92%. On January 16, 2026 at 2:47 p.m., Representative Thomas Massie from Kentucky confronted FBI Director Kash Patel during House Oversight Committee testimony with mathematical proof that the Epstein files cover-up had collapsed. 92% of names connected to Jeffrey Epstein's criminal network were already public record through government releases, meaning the FBI's claims of protecting ongoing investigations were demonstrable lies documented as legal evidence before Congress. Kash Patel didn't expect Thomas Massie, the congressman known for never asking questions he doesn't have answers to, would arrive with 50-page folder containing analysis proving that flight logs, visitor records, and witness statements the FBI had claimed for years were too dangerous to release were now publicly available, leaving only 8% still redacted. Thomas Massie didn't waste time on pleasantries before asking the question FBI Director Kash Patel could not answer. If 92% of these names are already public names of powerful people protected for years, why is the FBI still claiming it needs to redact information for ongoing investigations? What investigation? Into whom? What did Thomas Massie's systematic mathematical demolition of Kash Patel's excuses reveal about which names in the final 8% of Epstein files are worth destroying FBI credibility to protect? And why did FBI Director respond with physical tells captured on camera, tightened jaw? White knuckles proving he knows exactly who he's covering for, but cannot admit it before Congress without exposing conspiracy documented in legal evidence that 92% already released proves beyond doubt. January 16, 2026, 2:32 p.m. House Oversight and Accountability Committee, Rayburn House Office Building. For 90 minutes, FBI Director Kash Patel had navigated standard oversight questioning with practice deflection, budget allocations, personnel decisions, field office operations. Nothing unexpected, nothing he couldn't handle with bureaucratic non-answers honed over years of congressional testimony. Representative Thomas Massie sat quietly through those 90 minutes, watching, waiting, letting other members exhaust their time on questions Kash Patel could easily evade. Anyone familiar with Thomas Massie's reputation knew what that silence meant. The former MIT engineer turned congressman doesn't grandstand. He doesn't ask rhetorical questions. He arrives with evidence, does the math, and systematically destroys witnesses who think they can bluff their way through testimony before Congress. At 2:47 p.m., Chairman James Comer recognized Thomas Massie for questioning. What happened over the next 5 minutes would trend globally within minutes and potentially end FBI Director Kash Patel's career. Director Patel. Thomas Massie began without pleasantries or warm-up, his Kentucky accent carrying the calm authority of someone holding winning hand. The new batch of Epstein files was released last week. Are you familiar with them? Kash Patel nodded with practiced confidence. The FBI has been cooperating fully with all document releases as mandated by... That's not what I asked. Thomas Massie interrupted, his voice sharpening slightly. The room's energy shifted. C-SPAN cameras captured the moment Kash Patel realized this wouldn't be routine questioning. Are you familiar, Thomas Massie repeated slowly, deliberately, with the contents of those files? FBI Director Kash Patel shifted almost imperceptibly in his seat. Micro-adjustment that trained observers caught but casual viewers might miss. I've been briefed on the general nature of the released materials. Yes. General nature, Thomas Massie repeated, letting the evasive phrase hang before Congress. Then he reached for thick folder sitting on table before him, approximately 50 pages, judging by thickness. He opened it slowly, methodically, ensuring every camera in room captured the deliberate reveal of documents that would serve as legal evidence destroying Kash Patel's credibility. Director Thomas Massie stated at 2:49 p.m., looking directly at FBI Director across witness table. According to my analysis of the released documents, 92% of the names mentioned in connection with Jeffrey Epstein's operation are now public record. The number landed like bomb in hearing room. 92%. Thomas Massie let it settle, watching Kash Patel's reaction before continuing presentation of legal evidence before Congress. These aren't sealed files anymore. Thomas Massie continued, his engineering background evident in systematic presentation. These aren't classified materials. These are names that the American public can now read for themselves. Flight logs showing who traveled on Epstein's private jets. Visitor records documenting who came to his properties. Witness statements describing who participated in or enabled his criminal network. Camera zoomed in on FBI Director Kash Patel's face, capturing the jaw muscle tightening visibly. Physical tell of stress and calculation as he processed how to respond to mathematical proof that FBI's years of excuses about protecting investigations had become indefensible, lie documented as legal evidence. So, my question is simple. Thomas Massie stated with devastating clarity before Congress, if 92% of these names are already public, names of powerful people, names that have been protected for years, why is the FBI still claiming it needs to redact information for ongoing investigations? What investigation? Into whom? The silence that followed was profound. Not polite waiting for answer silence. The heavy silence of everyone in room recognizing they were witnessing something significant, mathematical proof of cover-up, presented as legal evidence that FBI director could not refute without admitting conspiracy. Kash Patel attempted recovery with practiced bureaucratic deflection. Congressman, the FBI's redaction protocols are based on established legal frameworks that protect both ongoing investigative interests and the privacy rights of individuals who have not been charged with. I didn't ask about protocols. Thomas Massie cut through evasion like knife. I asked you a specific question. 92% of the names are out. The public knows who visited that island. The public knows who was on those planes. The public has seen the testimony. So what exactly is the FBI protecting at this point? Observers watching C-SPAN feed notice Kash Patel's hands pressed flat against witness table, fingers white at knuckles from pressure, another physical tell captured as legal evidence of FBI director under extreme stress before Congress. The FBI does not make determinations about document releases based on public pressure or political. That's not an answer either, Thomas Massie interrupted again at 2:51 p.m. Then he did something witnesses describe as chilling. He laughed. Not loud laugh, small, almost sad laugh, the kind of laugh that comes when confirming something you hoped wasn't true. Director Patel, Thomas Massie stated with mathematical precision that made his MIT engineering background evident, let me make this very clear. The American people aren't stupid. They can see what's happening here. 92% of the names are already in the public domain, documented as legal evidence anyone can verify. The remaining 8%, that's what you're protecting. He paused, letting cameras capture Kash Patel's increasingly uncomfortable posture before delivering knockout question before Congress. And everyone watching this right now is asking the same question, who's in that 8%, and why are they worth destroying the FBI's credibility to protect? The mathematical framing was devastating because it was irrefutable. Thomas Massie wasn't speculating about conspiracies or alleging cover-ups based on suspicion. He had done the analysis documented in 50-page folder before him. He had counted names in released Epstein files. He had calculated percentage. And that calculation, 92% already public, proved beyond mathematical doubt that FBI's continued redactions served no legitimate law enforcement purpose, documented in legal evidence. For years, Epstein files had been protected behind claims of national security, ongoing investigations, privacy concerns, every excuse imaginable deployed to prevent release. But as Thomas Massie was now demonstrating before Congress, those excuses had become mathematically impossible to maintain. If 92% of supposedly too dangerous to release names were now public without causing national security crisis or compromising investigations, then the remaining 8% couldn't possibly justify continued secrecy, unless that 8% contained names so powerful that exposure would be politically catastrophic rather than legally problematic. At 2:53 p.m., FBI Director Kash Patel attempted counteroffensive that would backfire spectacularly. Congressman, I find it troubling that members of this committee seem more interested in sensationalizing document releases than in supporting the FBI's legitimate law enforcement mission. Wrong move. Thomas Massie didn't even blink before delivering response that would be clipped and shared millions of times within hours. Director, the FBI's legitimate law enforcement mission should include holding powerful people accountable for crimes against children, Thomas Massie stated with controlled fury. Instead, what we've seen is an agency that spent more energy investigating parents at school board meetings than pursuing the clients of a convicted sex trafficker. Don't lecture me about mission. Someone in gallery audibly gasped. Kash Patel's face cycled through visible emotions in seconds. Anger at being challenged, calculation of how to respond, then blank mask he wears when he's lost argument, but won't admit it before Congress and cameras serving as legal evidence. The FBI has pursued all credible leads in the Epstein matter, Kash Patel responded, voice flat and rehearsed. Our commitment to justice is unwavering. Then release the rest of the files. Thomas Massie replied with simple, devastating logic. That decision isn't solely within my. You're the FBI director, Thomas Massie interrupted at 2:54 p.m., pulling out another document from his folder as legal evidence. You testified under oath 6 months ago, July 16, 2025, before Senate Judiciary Committee that you would bring transparency to this agency. You told that committee the Epstein files would be released as quickly as legally permissible, 6 months, and we're still fighting for the last 8%. The documented broken promise, complete with specific date and, quote, eliminated Kash Patel's remaining credibility before Congress. He had made explicit commitment under oath. 6 months later, with 92% already released, proving no legal barriers existed, that promise remained broken, suggesting deliberate obstruction rather than legitimate legal concern documented in legal evidence. Thomas Massie gathered his papers deliberately. I'm done with my questions, Mr. Chairman. I think Director Patel's non-answers speak for themselves. The exchange lasted exactly 5 minutes, but those 5 minutes accomplished what years of investigations, lawsuits, and public pressure had not: mathematical proof that Epstein files cover-up had collapsed, that 92% of names were already public, and that FBI's continued protection of final 8% served no legitimate law enforcement purpose, but rather protected specific powerful individuals whose exposure would be politically catastrophic. Within 3 minutes of exchange ending, 92% began trending on social media platforms. Within 10 minutes, clips had been viewed over 2 million times. Within 30 minutes, legal analysts were discussing mathematical impossibility of Kash Patel's position on cable news networks. The mathematical framing Thomas Massie deployed was brilliant because it transformed subjective argument about government transparency into objective proof of conspiracy. You cannot claim ongoing investigations require protecting 8% of names when you've already released 92% without compromising those same investigations. The logic is inescapable. The math doesn't lie. And FBI Director Kash Patel, sitting before Congress unable to answer simple question, who's in that 8%, provided legal evidence that answer would be too damaging to admit publicly. By 3:12 p.m., when hearing concluded, Kash Patel's position had become mathematically untenable before Congress and public. The excuses that worked for years, national security, ongoing investigations, privacy concerns, had been exposed as lies by simple arithmetic, documented in legal evidence that Thomas Massie had methodically compiled in 50-page analysis. Today, January 16, 2026, the question is no longer whether Epstein files contain names of powerful people who committed or enabled crimes. 92% already released confirms that fact beyond doubt. Question now is which specific names and final 8% are worth destroying FBI's institutional credibility to protect, and how long FBI Director Kash Patel can maintain cover-up before mathematical reality forces. Disclosure documented in legal evidence that 92% already proves conspiracy existed. The implications extend beyond single hearing before Congress. Thomas Massie had fundamentally shifted burden of proof. Previously, those demanding Epstein files release carried burden of proving government was hiding something. Now, with 92% public as legal evidence, FBI Director Kash Patel carries burden of explaining why final 8% requires continued protection, and he cannot meet that burden without admitting what everyone already knows: those names are too politically explosive to release. Legal scholars analyzing testimony noted prosecutorial trap Thomas Massie constructed. Former federal prosecutor Andrew McCarthy explained on Fox News, when 92% of supposedly classified materials are already public without national security consequences, claiming the remaining 8% requires protection for same reasons becomes legally indefensible position. Massie forced Patel to choose between admitting cover-up or maintaining lie that no one believes. The political ramifications were immediate. By evening January 16th, Republican senators who had defended Kash Patel were demanding answers about the 8%. Senator Josh Hawley tweeted, "If 92% is out, release the rest. What are we hiding?" Even allies recognized mathematical proof made continued defense impossible before Congress and constituents. Thomas Massie's genius lay in reducing complex scandal to simple arithmetic. Anyone could verify as legal evidence, not subjective interpretation, not partisan accusation. Mathematics, 92% public, 8% protected. The numbers tell story. FBI Director Kash Patel cannot spin before Congress. Within hours, investigative journalists were compiling lists of names from released Epstein files to verify Thomas Massie's 92% calculation. Initial analysis confirmed his math was accurate. Hundreds of names across flight logs, visitor records, depositions were now public legal evidence that anyone could examine. The cover-up had collapsed, not through dramatic revelation, but through mathematical inevitability. You cannot release 92% while claiming 8% is too dangerous without exposing the lie. Thomas Massie proved that today. Kash Patel confirmed it through silence that spoke louder than any confession before Congress could have. 90-2% public, 8% protected. Math doesn't lie. Verified.